Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with a guy live series. This is this old bike, and I have something very special going on today. These are one of those rare opportunities, bikes that you just don't see a lot of, and they didn't make a lot of them, to be honest. And being a little bit older and the uniqueness of it, one of those special things. When you see it, you kind of have to just really ask some questions and contact the seller and, you know, like, hey, what you got here? Well, today I got something, it's pretty cool, and I'll go over some details with it. Sorry about the mess. I've been kind of, well, we're in season, so I've been busy refurbishing bikes, doing repairs and tune-ups and so forth. So unfortunately, I'm not going to make a long video here, but I'd like to go over some details of this particular bike that I just acquired. And I will do a breakdown of what's going to cost you on this one, because it's one of those things like, yeah, it was nice, but there's always a but in there somewhere, isn't there, right? So anyway, thanks again for hanging out with me, the guy. Without further ado, let's unveil. This is, go mobile here, LeMond Victory carbon fiber OCLV 110, which is 110 grams per something, grams, ounce, whatever. But what the tricky, cool part is it's titanium. And titanium with carbon blend is not very common with LeMonds. And this does have the Reynolds, if you can see it, tubing. The year after, they actually used True Temper titanium, which I couldn't really tell you if it is better or worse. I'm really not that familiar with titanium in the sense of different grades. I know there is a whole bunch of different grades of titanium out there, but in this case, these were made in the United States. This does look like it has a little bit bigger welds than a lot of other Thai bikes I've seen. I actually have another one back here, which is a Fuji, which I don't think it's a Fuji. I think it was made for Fuji for a special event. But this particular one has the bonded, this is when they were still bonding carbon together, like lugged and tubed. So the Trek version of this was like well, they didn't have a titanium bike, but the carbon itself, I think it was like a 5500 model, something of that nature for the 110 carbon. But the titanium, Trek didn't do a lot in titanium, so I would highly suspect that the titanium frames that they made here were actually probably outsourced. I would have to try to dig in some more information about that. I know it was built in the United States in Waterloo, Wisconsin, but I'm not sure about the titanium bit, because that's a whole different realm, and Trek did not build a lot of titanium bikes, so I'm assuming he probably had somebody making those pieces for them, and then they finished off the frame at Trek. But anywho, very interesting. The Victory, which is the French spelling of victory, was Greg LeMond's victory in France, Tour de France, basically, and that's what's going on now. So watching that has been very entertaining. Looked like to me when these had these frames built, it was kind of like the precursor of customizing it, not necessarily changing the frame geometries and in that nature, but customizing it as a Grupo. And they still have that today as a Project One. You can get like a custom paint and then a group kit that would go with that. This one has Ultegra 10-speed. So to me, this is kind of interesting because the frame itself looks like to be a 2004, but the componentry Grupo is a little bit newer. So, and more like the 2005 and 2006 model. So I think it was like right in between those eras, and that was when LeMond was starting to get pretty, well, they were pretty popular already, and Trek was having the line very strong. This has the 10-speed Ultegra on there with the race lights, which I'm gonna have to double check because these did have an issue with the rims, the crack on them, but other than that, that'll be over what's gonna cost you a review. It does have some scuffs on it, but I think I can clean majority of this out. I did buy it from the original owner-ish. It was her mom's, and this was the daughter's that took over the bike. She never really got into road riding, plus it was a little bit big for her. So this bike has not had hardly any use really, and has newer tires. What's really cool about the, actually that's test 220 carbon. Huh, I thought it said 110 in the catalogs. Well, they made the spine bikes within 2003 is when I think they were released. And then they made them till 2006-ish. And from the next 2006, 7, or 7 and 8, before Trek cut the whole LeMond line, they cut out the titanium bit and just went full carbon, which is the Triumph carbon, which I'm currently riding today, which is a really nice bike. Personally, I like the LeMond geometries, how they fit. They fit a little bit differently, which fits my body a little bit better. So it kind of fit that void of, well, there's the Trek bike and there's the Specialized geometry and there's a couple other brands, and the LeMond was a nice little medium range. Also, when Trek had like the umbrella of Klein and so forth, it was like that one geometry, which kind of, it's like, they were pretty smart about it because they had basically 3 different road lines to 4, and they had all different geometries, which they kept them differently between all the lines. So in other words, somewhere, however your body was built, you would land in one of them, which was kind of cool. So for me, the LeMond fit me really well. I tried several of the OCLV Treks. They don't really fit me that well. Also the Kleins, I like the Kleins, but they're really kind of Porsche, Ferrari kind of feel. They're very, I wouldn't say twitchy, aggressive in the sense of turning and handling. So I like a little more of the relaxed comfort of that. And that's what the LeMond I'm currently riding. Also, I have a Pop Rod, which is their cyclocross version, which bueno, that's a nice one. It's full steel. I've always been kind of a steel rider myself. Whenever I got introduced with Ritchie tubing back in the days of the 90s with a mountain bike, I had a Ritchie tubing Mongoose, and it was pretty sweet. And I still kind of regret it today of selling it, but you know, you got to try new things all the time, that kind of deal. But what's kind of cool about this one is the titanium, the bonding of it. And I've only seen in the used market, since I've been doing this for the last 4 years, like 2 of them in person, including this one. So kind of out there, as they didn't make a lot of them, and they're really unique. And it's one of those things, if you're into titanium bikes or the steel bikes, this would be something if it was your size. And this one's a 53, hint hint, if anybody's waiting or looking for a 53 LeMond, this will be coming up online or available next week. So but anyway, what was very interesting also to me on this is you know, I met the engineer that was working at Trek at the time, and he was working at Trek in the early 2000s when they did the transition from United States to overseas carbon. And he had one of these frames as a test. So what my thought, I would have to reach out to him. I don't know if I still have his information, but he had a prototype of this that actually did a run through. And the prototype actually passed us that way. I was able to sell it to me. And it didn't have any of the stickers or the head badge. It was just the titanium and carbon, which was kind of cool. Kind of like a super nude kind of frame. Well, thinking about it, he mentioned he was in Taiwan at the time of production. So what my sneaky suspicion is the titanium pieces here were welded up in Taiwan and shipped over to Waterloo to have the carbon pieces put together, and therefore they can put the built in the United States. So I bet you the titanium part, hands down, was made overseas. There's a couple titanium companies locally that actually do source their titanium frames to be built overseas, which is, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's one of those things, they're built up for it and that kind of thing. There's also custom welders here local as well, like Black Sheep. They do custom frames and they actually weld everything in-house. So, you know, titanium is becoming, I wouldn't say it was lost there for a while. It's always been there. The cost of titaniums were pretty high in the 90s. Not necessarily, it is not a rare metal. That's the misnomer of titanium. Like, ooh, it's hard to find. Well, Not really. There's abundancy of it and they can get it pretty easily, but the problem was in the 90s was most of the titanium mines or whatever that were getting the ore to make titanium was in Russia. So therefore it made it expensive to get. Anywho, that's where I've heard some backstories of where titanium nowadays is more of a freely material used, crosses the borders without less markup. So the prices have gone down a little bit on titanium, but you still have to have the craftsmanship there. There's several titanium manufacturers and people that are custom building them in the States as well as overseas. There's still a great lively material to use. Seen it blend with a carbon. I've seen that with Serratas. They had a few of those. Maybe, I don't know if Moot's ever played with a carbon titanium blend, but titanium is one of those things that if you haven't ridden a titanium bike, you should try one at least if it fits into your budget and your stable of bikes that you have. You can check out my website, iknowaguybicycles.com. I do have a link to Unicorn Titanium. That guy is local. He has gravel bikes as a stock bike. If you needed something specifically designed and made for you, that is the guy to get a hold of if you have some kind of a need of a special frame geometry. It is costly, not gonna lie. Titanium and the smaller niche markets are still pretty expensive, but when you find something like this in the used market, gotta kind of grab it and go, all right, let's take a look at this and polish it up and make it really nice. It has Ultegra 10-speed triple, so my goodness, it's good for climbing hills and has like a good component package on it with a carbon fork. The wheels I'll have to double check. The rest of the specs are pretty standard. I did get the original stem back from the lady, and also I got a Continental tire that's new that'll match that as well. And this came from Summit Cycles, Berkeley, California. So if they're still around, hey, I got one of your bikes. And anywho, it's going to be one of those fun things to tear into and clean up. I wish this was my size. And luckily it isn't because I have too many bikes as it is. But it's one of those deals that you're going to definitely have to take a look and see. And I did want to take a peek at some of the serial numbers and if I can find anything. Sometimes they had stamps. Nothing really sticks out. Also, titanium is repairable. So this doesn't have a replacement hanger on there, but if you did ever get in a situation where the titanium was compromised, they can re-weld a dropout in there for you. So I've seen a couple bikes where they have the titanium patched, and it's not the prettiest thing because they do a little goober welds, that kind of thing to it, but it still is repairable. Like carbon fiber can be repaired as well. So those things are just, kind of cool. Anywho, well, I better dive into this. Well, I got to finish my other project where I featured this earlier this week, and I need to get the 5.2 going. I got all the parts cleaned up and all that. So that's what's going on in my little world this week. I've got a slew of other awesome bikes to work on, which you'll see featured videos on. A couple 2200s, which are old school, more of your entry-level stuff. But I do have a LeMond Bornese, can't say that right. It's a full steel one with, I think that one does have, that has the Reynolds steel as well. Not titanium, but regular chromoly. Then I do have a specialized ruby full carbon to work on coming up. So anywho, well, thank you for tuning in, and hope you enjoy the further videos I'll produce with this one. And if I don't hear from you from then, have a great weekend. Get out there. If it's nice out in your neck of the woods, go for a ride. It's time.